You shouldn't be allowed to talk or reason because you're harmful to society and you're a disgrace to mankind, and you're ultimately lead your family to damnation. And that because of that, you're the worst father possible. You don't see what you're doing now is just doing nothing but circularity. You're saying your moral standard is what gives you the right. I say, why does your moral standard? Because it's my moral standard.
Why ought you obey God?
Because I've been bought with the blood of God, Acts 20:28, and I'm obligated to follow what he says because of that purchase.
Okay, so you ought to obey God because you're obligated, which is another word for ought, to obey God. You sound very circular, Matt. You see how this works?
That you recognize. I have you on my Bose headset. I hope it's not too noisy. If it is, just say, "Hey, Matt, you're making too much noise," and I won't be offended. I'll just try and be quieter.
No, you're perfect right now.
In trash.
You're perfect.
Okay. How about this? 3, 2, 1. Is that too loud?
No, I heard it, but it's not loud.
Oh, okay, good. All right. And if I speak under my breath about you being a slime dog, I hope you don't hear that.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me. You can call me whatever you want.
Can you guys talk about whether PineCreek Doug actually believed in Jesus Christ when he was a Christian?
They went out from us because they never were of us. If they had been of us, they would have remained. So you can have an intellectual belief. That's like 2 Corinthians 7:10 talks about different types of repentance. There's true and false. So you can have true and false belief, and that would be the case with him.
But to be fair, I could still die and go to heaven. At some point, I might become a Christian again, right?
Christian again? You mean Christian for
a Christian for the first time.
Yeah, you could become if you really became a Christian, you'd go to heaven. It's simple.
Yeah. So technically, none of us here knows, according to your theology, none of us here knows where my salvation lies or not.
Yeah, I can't tell you what your salvation is, but I know where mine is. I know I'm saved. I don't know about you or anybody else.
Yeah. So that whole thing, he wasn't a Christian to begin with, well, that could be true, but that still doesn't mean much. I mean, it's all
is
up
it
to God
possible
in the end.
that? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to interject with a question for the conversation. Is it possible that PineCreek, according to your view, Matt, he could be simply backslidden in his faith and he'll return to the faith?
I don't know. I don't know his condition state. I don't know what he's, I don't know. If he's a denier of Christ, openly denies Jesus is God in flesh, died on the cross, rose from the dead, I'd say no, not even. Okay.
Yeah,
I have to say it's like always possible.
Yeah, but even all Catholics are going to hell, that's for sure.
I could understand you. Sorry. There's too many people talking. My
mom believes that I'm just a backslidden Christian, and I think she kind of believes that because it gives her comfort.
That's how moms are. Bless her heart, Well, let me ask you some questions. Can I grill you a little bit?
Sure.
If it's okay, please understand I'm not trying to judge you. Maybe mock, but not judge, okay? That was another joke. Can
I guess your question
right
before? Oh, sorry. Yeah, no. I was going to guess what you were going to ask me, but you already started, so never mind.
All right, that's okay. Do you affirm right now that Jesus Christ died on the cross, rose from the dead?
Do I affirm it? No.
Okay. Well, you're not a Christian then. Next.
Yeah, that's pretty obvious. But I guess my question back to you is I don't believe hell exists. It doesn't matter, if hell exists or not. It doesn't matter what I believe about it, as far as
PineCreek, become a Catholic, man.
No, don't go to Catholic, or you'll go to hell too. Come on, I want to hear what you had to say. He was talking.
Yeah, I guess. Is there any benefit to me being a Christian if we don't take the afterlife into consideration?
Well, that's kind of interesting. It's like saying, can you consider what a circle is as long as it's not round?
Okay, yeah, you're talking about logical truth.
I'll put it up.
So, but let's assume I'm wrong about Christianity. You're right. But I already told you I'm a conservative. I believe in family values. I bet you, if you knew my life, you would say, "Man, he's a better Christian." I mean, he acts like a better Christian than most Christians I know. Been faithful to my wife. Been married for 30 years, over 30 years.
Whoa, really? Oh,
Yep.
good. Congratulations.
Have two wonderful kids. I believe I homeschooled my kids for 6 years, K through 6, 7 years.
Okay.
I think a lot of society is, in
His
quotes.
wife is a Christian.
My wife is a Christian. I don't try to dissuade her from Christianity. I encourage her to go to church and to small women's groups and all that.
Hey, Doug,
Nice.
quick question.
What's that?
Good for you.
How many of those 30 years are happily married?
All of them. And I say
For
that.
who, or
I
him
say
or
that-
her?
I say that honestly. No, we have a wonderful marriage. And we raised two great children, productive members of society. So I guess one question my wife has found it hard to answer for me, and we very rarely talk about religion anymore, but I asked her, why do I need Christianity? And I think her answer is, here on earth, you don't. It's not like I need to pray to God to help pay the electric bill. I'm not sick. Maybe that will change someday, but I don't need to pray to God to help me with my health or the health of my family. I'm a realist. Like, if bad things happen, and I accept it. I'm very content in life. I would say I'm happy. I have peace. I don't worry about things like a lot of people do. And so she found it very hard to answer.
To be happier.
So she found it
I'm
very.
finished. I'm finished.
She find it very difficult to answer that question. Why do I need Christianity for here on earth?
So are your kids atheists too, or they do whatever they want?
I'm hearing a ton of background noise.
You said, are your kids atheists too?
I would say yes, but they might not use that label.
So thank you, PineCreek, for making atheists.
They're skeptical.
But you're a
You would
good
say.
person.
But again, like, my kids are very productive members of society. They both have jobs. They both are well respected among their peers. And I really don't see the practical value of Christianity, other than, assuming even if it's true, other than eternal salvation, eternal life, which is a huge one if it's true. But here on earth, I don't really see it.
All right. So are you going to live past tonight?
I hope so.
And if you don't?
Then I
And if
die.
you don't?
Yeah, we hope so too.
Okay. So if Christianity is true, then now does matter, because now is the time of salvation.
Right, I understand that, but I don't believe it's true. So that's the problem, right? So, like, for example, the concept of hell does not scare me one bit. That's how confident I am
Really?
that it's not true. Really, I'm
Oh.
not. I'm being sincere.
Have you?
You broke up.
You cut out, Matt.
You cut out, Matt.
Yeah, we're talking about
Blue panic.
Is he driving? Or?
No, he'll be back.
Who knows?
He's probably just moving around.
He's in his garage, so
Oh,
he
there we
might
go.
be going in and out
Are
of
you
his
there?
Wi-Fi.
There you go.
There
Okay.
you are. Hi,
No, my
Matt.
phone, it just kind of hangs up, or not hangs up, but goes mute every 10 minutes or so if I don't move it. So I got to move it every 5 minutes.
Okay, boo.
So I was gonna ask you, let's just, I forgot what I was gonna say, dang it. Oh yeah, NDEs, near-death experiences. Have you researched any of those at all?
Yeah, a while back I did, and they're not convincing to me at all. I think it can be explained by neurons firing in the brain and a recall of past experiences. But the general gist of it, without debating it, I've never found it convincing. I can imagine things that would find it convincing to me. I can imagine what would change my mind.
Well, as a researcher writer, I've done a lot of research on NDEs, And all of them, I'm with you. It could be this, it could be that, except for one category of them, which I know of no way to explain them. And that is people who are born blind and they're on an operating table and they die for, 10 minutes, whatever it is. There's lots of accounts, not like millions, but there's lots of accounts where they're born blind, never have seen, they die on the operating table, and then they revived, and they say, I went and I understand what you mean by seeing now. I went over to this room, and there was Aunt Martha, Uncle Joe, because they could hear the voices, recognize them, and told them, describe what they were wearing. I mean, things like this, which is no possible way. It's brain neurons firing, just not happening. And these kinds of things, that's what gives me okay, something's up now. Have you ever heard of those at all?
Yeah, and I don't find them convincing at all. A lot of them are like from decades ago, and it's like I would love to talk to a person like that firsthand. I don't know how much of it is cognitive coaching through some type of therapy of like after the fact. But to me, there's things that would change my mind that are way better than NDEs. And that is,
what's up?
It would be things like, let's say,
I don't know why you guys waste your time with this guy, man.
Dude, let him finish. Golly.
Loser, man. He has his own channels, always going after Catholic, Christian.
You're going to be muted if you keep that up.
So, like basic things that took place that's reported in the New Testament as taking place, the miracles. So, Matt, if you were to come to my house, I have a pool in the backyard. I know my pool. And if you didn't know it was coming, I just said, hey, in the name of Jesus, can you use the name of Jesus to walk on my pool? Just stand in the middle of my pool without sinking.
Okay. Let's say I did that.
Yeah.
What would I do for you?
I would probably start investigating Christianity and saying, what type of Christian should I become? So, for example, if if I had a Muslim friend who did the same thing, and I said, pray to Allah that you can stand on the pool, and it didn't happen, I mean, that would be, I think, evidence for Christianity.
Well, I have proof then of a miracle for you. I could show you a picture of my wife 30 years ago when we got married. Total stone fox. Take a picture of me. I look like a bag of rocks. There's a miracle that she married me. Okay?
Some
that would be hard
for
you to refute. Well, it just shows you that their miracles do happen. Okay?
But would you say that my sort of condition to believe is bad?
To believe? Yeah, and the reason is because then your condition to believe would be based upon experience. Now, and not Christ, and not your need, because the issue is, for example, here's one of the things I do with people. I'll try and set you up, but not maliciously. So if you play along, I'll try and set you up a little bit. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Can I try?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So you and I are at a park, and you're a polite guy, and we're just politely discussing and disagreeing and drinking a cup of coffee and having a good time. And I show you a picture of my wife, and you say, wow, you are right. It is a miracle. All right. So, and we're talking, and we see a man beat a woman to the ground really fast. We run over there to try and stop him. He kicks her, hurts her, robs her, and he gets away. That's an injustice, right?
Yes.
He should be punished, right?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. So you and I, a year later, are in South Africa, same discussion. Hey, there it happens again. A woman gets beat and all this stuff. We go to rescue her, but we don't get there in time, and the guy gets away. And so that's also an injustice, right? He ought to be punished. Right?
Yeah.
So what you're doing is you're saying there's a universal ought. You're saying there's a universal thing. It doesn't depend on where you are or when you are. That someone ought to be punished because it's a moral ought. It's a universal truth that you're adhering to, right?
No, that I disagree with it. That it's universal.
Oh, so okay. So if we go to Nigeria and it happens, then he shouldn't be punished, right?
No. I'm saying that based on my standard of morality, my standard, I would say in both cases that they should be punished, given that it's this situation. There's not some weird moral dilemma going on.
Right. But why should he be punished?
based on my standard of morality.
Okay, now I'm going to go up one level here. I'm going to
But
offer you a
does that make
sentence.
sense? Like my answer, does that make sense?
Yeah, I
to you?
understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Based on your system, it ought to be done. So it's subjective. What you're saying is your subjective system. So let me ask you. I'm going to raise the.
Are we going to
flame up a
Hitler? Is
little
this where
bit.
it's going?
Going, going where?
Are we going to Hitler? That's the ultimate.
No. No. How about this? Statements are true or false. Okay. I am cleaning the garage food, which is true. And talking to you is true. I'm also an albino elephant. That's false. Okay. So statements have truth value or false value. So I'm going to offer you a statement. Tell me if it's true. And I'm going to try and get you to justify why it's true. All right. Here's a statement. It is, oh my goodness, look at that. I just found a gigantic thing of dill pickles. My goodness.
Don't eat them.
How long has that been there? I'm not going to. They're moving. One of them kind of smiled at me.
Praise Jesus.
Yeah. Man, that's not good. You know, when food looks at you back, oh, okay, I'm done. So here's a statement. It is always morally wrong for anyone to torture babies to death merely for their personal pleasure. True or false? I'm setting you up, just let you know.
Yeah, no, I know. This is the classic example. I would say true, but it's because of the reason, for fun.
Okay, here's the problem that you would have, is that you're affirming a universal moral absolute. It's always wrong, morally wrong for anyone. Always. This is universal. If you're, whatever you are, atheist or agnostic, your opinion is that there's a universal moral obligation.
Well,
now,
but again, it's based on my standard.
How do you justify that?
It's based on my standard.
Yeah.
It's the same answer I gave before.
Your standard is there's a universal moral obligation for everybody. That's your standard.
No.
All right.
For me. So, for example, I could ask the same trap question back to you, and let's up it up another notch. Would you, true or false, what Hitler did to the Jews in the concentration camps was wrong?
It's true. It was wrong.
Okay. What if God commanded it, decreed it, and wanted it? Is it still wrong?
What kind of want?
That God actually planned it out. In fact, let's say he commanded Hitler, God himself commanded Hitler to do it, and Hitler was following God's command. Is it wrong now?
If that's what God commanded, then by definition, it would automatically be good because whatever God does is good.
Okay.
So the answer that you ask requires the affirmative.
Perfect. So what you have just said, that it's not universally wrong to slaughter Jews.
No, I didn't say that. I said if God were to command that, because the principle is if God commands something, there's a reason. And God's reasons we can talk about. Everyone's guilty before God, which is why he said, go kill all the Amalekites, all the Canaanites. Go take care of them, wipe them all out. So he commanded the Israelites to do that, and it was morally right. And we can discuss why that's morally right.
I understand, but notice your answer is similar to mine. Based on God's standard, for that situation, it was wrong. Same with me, based on my standard, given that situation, it's wrong. But on a general blank statement, is it always wrong to kill a Jew for fun? Or not, let's say not for fun, just for a reason? You would say no. And I would say no, because it depends on the situation, right?
You're not making any sense to me. You said for a reason.
So let's say you and I look at an action between two humans. We're walking down the street and we see a person pull a long machete out of their jacket and chop the head off of a little girl. I look at you and I say, that's evil. You look at me and say, that's evil. But now we get new information. God decreed and commanded that guy holding the machete to do it. Now you have to change your answer. It went from this is evil to this is good. Correct?
See, I do that. Would you change your answer too?
If I was a Christian and believed that this God's real, yeah.
But would you change your answer? Because you see, if you say no, you wouldn't change your answer, then you're saying there's a moral obligation that others must abide
No, no, no,
by.
no. What I would say in that situation, that my standard of morality is better than your God's. That's what I would say. So let's say it's true that God exists and commanded the guy with the machete to chop off the girl's head. You would change your mind. I would still say it's evil. Because I would say that my morality is better than God's.
You yourself judge as being better than somebody else. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay? Yeah, you're begging the question. You're assuming you're the moral judge.
Well, I am.
What gives you the right to be that and say someone else is wrong?
Freedom.
Freedom. Okay.
You can
There's an is ought.
you can say that you are you do the exact same thing when you say God is the
No, I don't.
the moral arbiter or the standard of morality. You
No, I
have
don't.
chosen to make God your moral compass. Right? That was your choice. And he cut
Yes,
over
so
again.
what?
So I'm saying that we both have chosen our standards.
Can I, if Matt would allow, can I ask PineCreek a quick question and then I'll bow out?
Sure.
Is that okay, Matt?
He
Maybe he's got.
He cut off. He cut off.
he'll be back in a
Okay.
minute.
My
Okay,
question.
no.
Matt,
Oh,
hey, Matt. I was just asking PineCreek. Would you mind if I ask PineCreek a quick question and then I'll back out?
sure.
So my question, PineCreek, would be that in this view, that in the hypothetical worldview that God is real, and we acknowledge that God is the creator, including He created your mind, would it not be self-defeating to say if God created your mind and you think that you know better than God, it's a self-defeating proposition?
No, I don't think so. Not automatically. I think your intuitions would think that. I admit to that. That okay, if he created you, then he's better than you. But there's a hidden assumption there that just because he created you means that he's a perfect moral being. You would have to add that in. Right?
So the issue here
that's
we need to
reasonable,
get back
right?
to is you're an atheist, right?
Yeah.
What moral standard do you have by which you can then judge others what is right and wrong?
I would say very similar to yours. We look at outcomes, what seems to benefit our survival, our happiness, our long-term peace and joy, what things like the golden rule, empathy we can use. And I actually think that Christians have that same system, but they just attribute it to a God.
No, that's not it. If you're going to argue from the Christian perspective, you should know the Christian perspective. That's not the Christian perspective.
I know it's not the Christian perspective.
So-
It's my perspective on how Christians act.
Well, it's your perspective, but your perspective is wrong. That's not the reason. That's right. I am telling you you're wrong because that's not the reason that Christians
Yeah, but that's
do
not
that.
very.
It's not a practice.
But Matt, that's not very helpful. Just to say
me
to
finish.
someone that they're wrong. You got to give a reason why you think they're wrong.
I was.
Okay.
But you're starting to interrupt me a lot now. Okay.
Well, okay,
So-
Matt, I could be very honest with you. I do not see you as better than me or more important than me. So I will interrupt you as much as you interrupt me. Is that fair?
Those are the rules you want.
Okay, fine.
So you're an atheist, right?
Correct.
Do you have the right to impose any moral value on anybody else?
Through voting, yes.
To impose your moral view on anybody else, do you?
Through voting, yes.
Voting is not what we're talking about.
But that answers your question. So in other
No, it
words,
doesn't.
if I think a certain policy or issue is wrong and I want it changed, and if the government is the arbiter or the one that's enforcing these laws, these rules, and I don't like it, I can use my vote to change it. So in that way, I am
We're-
imposing. In that sense, I am imposing.
Making sure you're done.
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay. So the man who's beating up that woman we talked about earlier, do you have the right to stop him?
Yes. You have the right to.
On what value?
On my own personal standard.
Okay. So what you're doing is you're imposing your personal standard on somebody else.
Yes. But
Okay.
I have to also reap the consequences if I'm wrong. So, for example, if I commit an action on another human being and I think I'm doing good, but really I'm doing bad, society also has the right to impose morality on me by, let's say, locking me up in jail.
So we're not talking about society. We're talking about you doing something where you impose your moral value on somebody else. And I'm asking you, what specific reason is there that justifies why you can impose your moral value on another individual?
What specific, my standard again, it's always going to be the same answer.
So you're saying the reason you have the right to impose your moral value on someone else is because it's your moral value.
Yeah, but we got to be careful what you mean by right. Like when I hear the word right, number one, I don't like that word. I'm a responsibility guy, not a rights guy, although I do appreciate our Constitution and the rights we have it. So when you say the word right, automatically my brain thinks Constitution, but I'm not sure that's how you mean it. What do you mean by right? Like, are you talking, when you say right, do you mean freedom?
Stop someone from, do you have a moral obligation to stop someone from raping someone else?
It depends on the situation, but I would lean yes. Like there could be a situation where the person has a gun, and let's say I see this person rape a woman, but it is very clear that if I intervene, I'm going to die. That means my wife loses a husband, my kids lose a father.
Bite.
I still have obligations to them as well.
Okay, you're walking around. This often happens with atheists. You have to be super, super, super detailed because they always want to find ways to try and get out of the difficulty. So,
may I ask why you just
there's
said
no
what you
danger
said?
to your family, no danger to your family, no danger to yourself. You're able to stop someone from doing something really bad to somebody else. Do you have the moral obligation to act accordingly?
Based on my standard of morality, yes.
So you're saying on your standard of morality, you have the moral obligation to interfere with someone else's moral position.
Yes.
Okay. What justifies you having such a moral standard or moral right to impose your moral on anybody else?
My moral standard.
Okay. Well, you don't see what you're doing now is just doing nothing but circularity. You're saying your moral standard is what gives you the right. I say, why does your moral standard? Because it's my moral standard. What moral standard is it? Mine. That's why it gives me the right, because it's mine. So you're saying your moral standard gives you the right to impose your moral standard on anybody else.
Okay, well,
If that's the view.
But I would say you would say
do I have?
You would give the same
You
answer.
said you weren't going to interrupt. If that's your view, do I have the same right to impose upon you my moral standard?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm going to do that right now and say that you shouldn't be allowed to talk or reason because you're harmful to society and you're a disgrace to mankind and you're ultimately lead your family to damnation. And that because of that, you're the worst father possible. There's my moral value.
That's fine.
Am I right?
And Matt?
So
Matt and
hold on. Do I have the right to impose that on you?
Sure, you can try.
Impose.
Yeah, you can sure try.
Impose.
Yep.
Oh, I could. But here's the thing.
You could what?
See, I could do it.
You could do what?
I could do that if I wanted to.
Do what?
There's always ways.
What could you do?
Oh, I could do it whatever I wanted to do, right? Because it's morally okay, right?
No. Now we're talking about two different things. You're talking about, do you have the power to do it?
Yeah, I have the power to do a lot of things, just like you do.
Okay, but do you have the power to, let's say, stop me from, let's say, raising the children the way I raise them?
If I were to become a pagan and shoot you and kill you, yeah, which I would never do, of course. I don't want any harm
Okay,
to
but
come
as
to
a
you or
Christian,
your
how
family.
would you impose it on me?
How would I impose it as a Christian?
Yeah.
I said if I wasn't a Christian.
I know, but before that, you said you have the moral right, or were you just completely talking in the hypothetical?
I'm talking hypothetical based on your assumptions. I have the right to do whatever I want to do because that's your position that you're saying. You have the right to bring it on somebody else. Therefore, I can say the same thing and say,
Yeah.
I have the right to impose upon someone else too. But you see, the problem with that is that if that position is upheld, it ultimately leads to chaos. It leads to anarchy.
Okay, but Matt, that is true if there's no laws of the land. I agree with you, but we have laws of the
Who
land.
cares?
So if you want to impose something on another human being, you have that right, but you also have to suffer the consequences that other people in society impose on you back. So if you want to try to, for example, to stop me from being an atheist and talking in public, well, you have to go against the Constitution of the United States. You have to pick up arms and try to physically stop me, which you would have to be prepared for the consequences that I would fire back and kill you.
So we're not talking about legality, we're talking about morality. You keep mixing them. So I'm asking you, what moral right do you have to impose yourself upon others? Not the practice, how do you do it, the right to do it. But
Through the
you're right,
Constitution
you're
of the United
saying
States.
You said you weren't going to interrupt me.
Well, you've asked the same question like 4 or 5 times, Matt. Let's be fair.
The fairness is you said you weren't going to interrupt.
I never said that. I said that I would.
Folks, did he not say that he'll treat me and won't interrupt as I don't interrupt, right?
That's what I said.
Okay. Have I been interrupting you?
I think so, a little bit.
I noticed that when atheists start to get cornered, they start getting more interruptive.
But Matt, let me ask you some questions now, because it seems like you're asking the same question over and over again. Why ought you obey God?
God desires it of me. I've been bought with the blood of Christ. I'm no longer my own. I belong to him.
Okay, but even as a slave, you can still rebel. Why ought you obey God?
Because I've been bought with the blood of God, Acts 20:28, and I'm obligated to follow what he says because of that purchase.
Okay, so you ought to obey God because you're obligated, which is another word for ought, to obey God. You sound very circular, Matt. You see how this works?
That you recognize. Yeah, I do. I'm glad you recognize circularity. You can recognize it in someone else, but not yourself. The reason is because personally, I've been bought with the blood of God on the cross. I am therefore no longer my own. And because he is the terminus, he is the ultimate, he is the king, he is the sovereign, I therefore should morally submit myself to his wisdom, his will, and his work.
Okay, so
that's why.
Okay, I got your answer. So if a slave is bought by the slave owner, they ought to do whatever the slave owner says?
What kind of slave?
A generic slave. A slave that's been bought. Becomes property
There's
of the slave owner.
All kinds of slavery.
Can you answer the question?
There's all kinds of slavery. Yeah, you have to define your terms first. There's all kinds of slavery in the Bible.
A slave who's been bought by the money of the slave owner now is property of the slave owner. Does that slave have a moral or an obligation to do what the slave owner says? Because the slave owner has bought them.
If the slave owner is perfect in all ways and perfect in all judgments, because he's the creator of the entirety of the universe in the first place, then yeah. And if he's buying you from another form of slavery, that is slavery to sin in the context of Bible, then it is also morally justifiable.
Is that your answer too, Matt?
Yeah, I can go with that. I can go with a different one, but that'll do for now.
Okay, so there's only a certain type of slave owner slave relationship where that ought applies then, and that's with God.
God is the terminus. And by the way, the slavery that you were talking about is not the biblical one. So
No, I didn't want to
it's
get
not a
into that.
realist.
I'm not one of those atheists who says that all the slavery in the Old Testament is evil and bad. I think that in a lot of cases, the type of slavery talked about in the Old Testament saved lives.
So, I'm very surprised to hear you say it because it is true. Not that it justifies all kinds, but that is true.
Yeah, I'm not your typical left-wing progressive atheist, Matt, who has a stick up his butt.
Oh, good.
But I do want to mention one other thing that popped into my head. That oftentimes, like I have a lot of experience talking with theists, just like you have a lot of experience talking to atheists, and I do understand, or I've realized that when we have conversations, like we started out talking about pork, and it seems like, especially with Calvinists, it ends up going to things like morality. I'm surprised you haven't brought up grounding for logic and that sort of thing, but maybe that will come up soon. But this gets you nowhere closer to Christianity, which is like if you can gain theism and still lose your soul, right? So the real issue here for us, because you're a Christian and I'm an atheist, is whether or not Christianity is true, not whether general theism is true, not whether there is this universal foundation or ought for morality. The issue is Jesus who he said he was? Did he rise from the dead? That's the key, right?
Yeah, that is the key. But I was showing you and others why your atheism is bankrupt and it cannot account for the basics of moral obligation. Because when I asked you specifics about the ought, you simply said it's because your opinion is that you ought. And I then worked with what you said and showed you how that would be problematic and that it would lead to chaos. And the thing is that you said the Constitution and other things and order is what you were implying. So therefore, you don't want chaos. But your own admission is that it would lead to it. So you're being inconsistent. If I can show you that your
I
atheism
did
is
not admit that.
inconsistent, you didn't admit to it.
I
But
didn't
that's
admit
what
that
the
would lead
case
to
is.
chaos.
If everybody does the
So why did you
same
say it
thing
did?
in the sense, if everybody does the same thing in the sense that they do whatever they feel is morally right on their own sensibilities, that leads to chaos.
Yeah, well, this is why we
Look in
have
the world
societies.
today.
But Matt,
Societies are simply.
I heard you, and I understand your point of view, and I agree with you that if you have a society where you don't have laws, it can very easily end up in chaos. But I hate even to say the phrase social contract and that sort of thing, which I'm sure you're familiar with. But you know, it exists for a reason, and I think that's what prevents this chaos.
What prevents the chaos is fear, and people want to just get along and the stuff. And that's fine. And you can have that under communism, socialism, Marxism, dictatorial systems, totalitarian, constitutional republics. You can have all kinds of stuff that brings order and, so to speak, harmony.
Yep.
But the issue here is what is right or wrong? And if you can just say that there is no right or wrong, and I ask you the question, is it always morally wrong for anyone to torture babies to death merely for one's personal pleasure? And you say yes, then you're saying your personal value is that there is a universal moral obligation. That is an inconsistency from your perspective. You, as an atheist, cannot justify a universal moral obligation, even if it's just your opinion that is there, because if you're an atheist, how do you justify that your opinion is even consistent with your atheism, by which you then say there is a universal moral ought? How do you justify it from your atheistic perspective? You can't. That's showing you the impossibility of your position.
Yeah, and I just think you're wrong about that. I think, like, for example, if I say that it's action X is always wrong based on my personal standard and someone disagrees with me, look what happens. What happens is we now talk about, we argue with each other and we talk about the pros and cons, the reasons why action X is wrong, the reason why you think it's universally wrong from your moral standard. And it's in the arena of ideas. And it ends up, I think, Christians end up being the same as atheists. They have to, like, for example, if you tell me that X is wrong because God said so, I can just say, so what? And then you have to try to convince
you don't
me.
get it.
No, I do get it. Like, can you answer that question? Let's say God said, and let's keep it generic. God says X is wrong. And I say, so what? Now what do you do?
I say, okay, there's the, no disrespect meant, there's the mind and the heart of a fool who has denied God and will suffer the consequences of his foolishness on the day of judgment when he says to God, I don't care, and God pulls a lever and poof, there you go to hell.
Right. Okay. And that's a great answer, because basically what you said earlier about how fear kind of gets rid of the chaos, Christianity is no different. It's a religion of carrots and sticks. If you don't listen to God, you will be punished. Which is no different, in my view, than secular humanism, as far as there's consequences. There's pain and pleasure. You can kill someone, but if you kills a person that it's not in self-defense, you will go to jail or you might be executed. There's the consequence. And so all the Christians have done is they've moved the carrots and sticks from planet Earth to the afterlife.
Except that trying to show you from your atheistic position, if you only have two, hypothetically, you only have two views, God, not God. And you want to use either one of those to explain whatever, the universe, morality, existence, rationality. And one of those is impossible and can't do it. That means then that the other is automatically true. Because it's called the impossibility of the contrary, and logic is a disjunctive syllogism. If your atheism can be shown repeatedly to not have any logical basis, any rational basis by which you can justify whatever it is you believe, affirm, and do, then it means that your atheism is basically a self-serving arbitrary system that you like. And then that means I'm just arguing with a guy about his opinions. That's all it is, because you can't justify any reason why your opinions are the right ones. That's the problem with your position.
Yeah.
Intellectually vacuous.
Well, but notice that would show that atheism is false, not necessarily Christianity is true, correct?
I said if there was the case of God and no God. That's what I said specifically.
Right. Yeah, so that means that does not get you any closer to Christianity, other than that a God exists.
It does. Yeah, it does get you closer, because once you establish that atheism is invalid, then you get into the issues philosophically of the one and the many, universals, particulars,
Right.
abstract entities, abstract concrete objects, abstract objects, and which worldview then can account for them.
But even then, that doesn't get you closer to Christianity, because a Muslim can use the same thing. And I really don't want to get into this, because you and I both have had this conversation, I'm sure of it, 1,000 times. Am I wrong?
Probably wrong. So a Muslim cannot do this, because the Muslim God, which is singular, cannot account for unity and diversity of the one and the many, and it can't do that from its theological perspective.
What if a Muslim were to just say that's your opinion?
It can't, because I've debated it with Muslims. They're not able to do it because philosophically and logically, Unitarianism leads to bankruptcy, because you can't account for the problem of the one and the many. That's just one of the issues. Are you familiar with that issue?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
You know what it is?
That there's a...
Don't. That's okay. I'm not going to mock you.
Well, no, the thing is, I don't see it as a problem. That's why it's... but I really dislike this type of conversation, because let me tell you my worldview, and you can poke holes in it if you like. My worldview is that it's reasonable, very reasonable, to say that something material, energy, has always existed, compared to that something, a new category of existence that we don't even quite comprehend, or can't even define, like spiritual or supernatural. So now we have these two categories, the supernatural, the spiritual, and the natural. To me, it's more reasonable that the natural has always existed. So I would say that the cosmos, not our universe, but the cosmos, the totality of everything, has always existed eternal past, just like God has. Except it's not a disembodied mind. It doesn't have will. And I will admit to one miracle, and that is the miracle that we exist. That through chemical and evolutionary processes, that we can think, that we're here. So actually, an argument that look at the tree, that's not a bad. Therefore, God. That's not a bad argument. You don't even have to go deeper than that. But I would say when it comes to, I think Christianity is borrowing from my worldview by taking my presuppositions that the universe exists, has the nature it has, and that we exist, that they've built upon my worldview to posit that there's a God. And I think we evolved with these proclivities to help us be more moral, to give us gravitas in telling people what to do. And so I view a lot of these arguments that you're bringing up as just a borrowing from my worldview to justify the belief in your God. And then we can get into the specifics of why I think Christianity is false. But yeah, so that's my worldview. Now you can poke holes in it.
Yeah, you said a lot of things that have lots of problems. One of them, you said matter is eternal. The universe is eternal, right?
Yeah. Cosmos, I said.
There's reasons that's not coherent for you to say that. Now, if I show you that it's not coherent, are you going to abandon that position, or are you going to retain it even if it's incoherent?
That you can't have an eternal past, is that what you're saying?
Eternal universe, eternal materiality, as you're saying. Do you believe the universe always existed?
Okay, when I said cosmos, do you know the difference between cosmos and universe?
Apparently not now. What is it?
So the cosmos refers to everything material that has always existed. And universe refers to our reality, like let's say post Big Bang.
Okay. So the cosmos has always existed, right?
Correct. Well, I don't know for sure, but that's my belief, yeah.
Okay, so you believe the cosmos has eternally existed, which means an eternal number of events has occurred, right?
Yes.
An infinite number.
Yeah.
So if an infinite number of events has occurred, then in one of those universes, you're a Christian, for real, arguing against yourself right now.
That could be, yeah.
Okay, so which of you is correct?
Which view is correct?
Yeah, which of you is correct?
Well, it would be the view. Which view, though, are you talking about? That God actually exists or it doesn't exist? Because I would say that the PineCreek Doug in the other universe that's a Christian is wrong.
He says you're wrong. Which one of you is correct?
I would say I am correct.
He says he's correct.
Yeah, and then we would debate exactly the way we're debating right now. So if I could find PineCreek Doug from the other universe and we sit down, I'll tell him this is the reasons why I think you're incorrect, and then he would act like you and say here's the reasons why I think you are incorrect, and we would have a debate.
What I'm showing you is that your position leads to internal contradiction. If the internal contradiction is that if there's an infinite number of events that have occurred in the cosmos, then by necessity the Christian God must exist because that's included in an infinite number of possibilities. It also means that you exist in another universe arguing against yourself right now, which means that you're contradicting yourself, which means your position leads to self-contradiction.
No.
Now, are you going to abandon that position?
No, because Matt, is the person that PineCreek Doug in another universe, is that the same person as me?
Yeah, in all aspects, priorities, in all properties. Yeah.
Are they in the same location, same space and time?
Of course not.
Yeah, so they're not the same person. So basically all you're saying is you got two people disagreeing with each other. So let me ask you this, Matt. Do you believe God's eternal past?
That doesn't really apply to God. That's a tough one.
Oh, it's a tough one. Okay,
yeah, it is.
Okay, now ask me if I believe the cosmos is eternal past. Well, it's a great question, Matt. That doesn't really apply to the universe. Can I give the same answer you gave for God?
Well, God's not part of the physical universe or the physical cosmos. So he's other than, it's a different category. You can't transfer the category attributes from one to the other. So if you're going to say the cosmos
is outside our universe.
You just interrupted again.
He won't acknowledge that he interrupted you.
Yeah.
Interrupting and then silence, that's crazy.
Okay, go ahead, Matt.
Here's the thing.
Go ahead, Matt.
Guys, I'm moderating this, and he's not really interrupting.
Well, we're doing okay, but he's just being inconsistent. I granted
He
a little
definitely
time. We might step on each other a little bit here and there, but he's doing it more and more. So I'm trying to point out that you have an inconsistency, that your position leads to internal inconsistency because if the cosmos is infinitely old, infinite number of time, infinite number of events, then why is it the Christian God does not exist in that infinite number?
Your question doesn't even make sense to me. It does not apply.
Because you're an atheist. Yes, it does.
So let me.
You said the cosmos.
Matt, you never answered my question. I'm taking your question. I'm putting it right back on you. Is God eternal past? Yes or no?
Well, it's hard to answer the question from a Christian perspective because when people on my radio show will call up and they'll say, God's outside of time. And I'll say, no, don't say that. We don't know how God relates to time. So we can't say he's outside of time, inside of time. We just don't know. And I don't know how to answer it because I don't know.
Okay. Now, what if I gave that exact same answer about the cosmos? Would you accept it?
Well, I'd examine it.
So your
Because
question to me
in
about the
your-
cosmos was tough to answer, Matt. I don't know because the concept of time. I mean, from the cosmos perspective, time might not even go forwards. It might go backwards. It might stand still. So it's outside of time. So can I not answer that way, like you answer for God?
Sure, if you want to adopt Christian principles to defend your position, you're free to do that.
Yeah, I think you're adopting naturalistic principles to give your answer.
No.
Because
No.
you're like we're
Naturalistic.
both like squirrels doing calculus here, right?
Here, I'll show you. Show you another reason why your position is fallible and refutes itself. And here's a simple one, and it works.
So hang on, are we abandoning that previous argument now?
No, I'm going to show you why your previous argument doesn't work from a different direction.
Okay.
Because you're going to say infinite this and time back, and that the cosmos has always existed. There is no God, so therefore everything operates under the laws of physics, chemistry, etc. Right?
No, I would not say that.
Oh, you wouldn't? Oh, I'm surprised. Okay, are there any?
Hang on, are you talking about our
laws?
universe or the cosmos?
The universe we're in. Let's just use that. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
Whatever it is,
Yeah.
whatever you know.
Yeah, that universe, our universe. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I thought you meant cosmos.
Okay, so in this universe that we exist in, it's limited by the laws of physics, motion, matter, chemistry, etc. Right?
Right. As far as we know.
Which means your physical brain is also limited, right?
Yeah, I cannot read your mind right now.
And so your physical brain is necessarily limited to the laws of physics, chemistry. We'll just say, for simplicity's sake, the laws of chemistry in your brain, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Then how is it that necessary chemical states that operate under necessary chemical reactions produce truth values?
I would say, how is it impossible? Like, why does the fact that we are governed by the laws of physics make the assessment of truth values impossible?
You're not answering, you're asking. You see the difficulty.
Okay, I'll answer.
I'll
answer it the same way you answered my question. I don't know. It's tough to answer.
No, it's not tough to answer. Given the premises you've already instituted and admitted to, your premises is the physical universe is restricted to operating under the laws of chemistry, physics, motion, matter. Those are your parameters. So now it's not an issue of ignorance. It's an issue of these are what you have claimed. I'm now working with what you've claimed, and I'm showing you the problem in it. The problem is that your brain, therefore, and its chemical reactions are necessary chemical reactions. One chemical state that necessarily leads to another chemical state. How does such chemical necessity produce proper truth values?
By pattern seeking, I would say, through pattern seeking. So let's say I am a moist robot, okay? A moist robot can still do pattern seeking, and basically, let's say it's trying to put a square into a round peg, and the robot tries and it doesn't work. It can compute, it's false that this shape goes into this hole.
Brain chemicals reacted and made you say a bunch of stuff. So how do you know it's true?
By pattern seeking. I just explained it.
How do you know it's true? Because your brain's making you say pattern sequence. How do you know it's true?
Well, you can just go by the pattern seeking. It's the same answer.
How do you know the same answer is the right answer?
Well, through testing. You could be wrong, but you could continue to test it. This is what is called provisional knowledge, which I think Calvinists hate. They hate that part of science because, in my opinion, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of Calvinists especially, they're a type of Christian who need, I'll say need with a capital N-E-E-D, they need to know for sure if something is true or false, and there's no provision for maybe it's not true. Am I wrong?
Your brain chemistry is making you say things. It doesn't mean it has any truth value to it. How do you justify that one chemical state in the brain that physically necessarily reacts and produces another reaction? How is it those reactions produce truth values and proper logical inference?
Well, I think there's no answer I can give. I've already answered that question twice now. And I said through pattern seeking, through testing, through observation. But I understand where you're coming from, Matt. From your point of view, you think that if everything is purely physical, there cannot be truth. Am I wrong? That's your view.
See, there goes your brain again, just making statements. I don't know if
I'm asking,
you
is that your view?
You keep interrupting. You keep interrupting. I always get to this place with atheists and they get stuck, just like you do. They get stuck because they see the problem. They can't get out of it because there is no way out of it. Like I did with Matt Dillahunty in our debate in Dallas, all I have to do now is say, hey, your brain may just say that. It's not an issue of truth. It's just necessary chemical reactions. The problem with that position is that it means then that everything that you produce is simply stimulus reaction via chemistry and necessity. That's all it is. From whatever you say, all I have to do is say your brain made you say that. It's not an issue of truth. And because of that, that position then brings doubt upon itself, and you can't trust that the position is true because it casts doubt on its own validity. It's self-refuting.
So
that's the problem.
Okay, I want to understand you. I think I understand you, but you're saying that if it is determined, you haven't used the word determined yet, but you implied it. Are you saying that if something's determined, it cannot have truth value?
I said, I asked you a question.
I'm asking a question back. Is that what you mean? That if something's determined.
I'm asking you, how is it that one chemical state that necessarily chemically leads to another chemical state in the brain, how does it produce proper logical inference and truth values?
Through testing, through observation, through pattern seeking. I've answered this like 4 times now.
You can't see the problem with your answer. You say by testing. So the brain produces chemical reactions that produce other things to do, and then what you see, that's how you know it's true because of something that it produced. So in other words, the chemical reactions produce certain things. That's how you know it's true because it produced certain things. But what you call the certain things it produces is testing. Oh, so now you're saying testing is how you discover truth. But that's just chemical reactions saying produce a test.
Why do you say just chemical
You're
reactions?
refuting yourself.
What else is there?
What else is there?
Yeah.
There's God.
Okay.
But you're the one saying.
Hang on.
You're the one saying,
Matt,
from your perspective.
Am I allowed to ask questions, or is this one-sided? No. See, we're
yes.
We're at an impasse because when I ask you, what else is there? Like the chemical firing of my neurons, when you and I are both thinking, we both agree that exists, right? We both agree that's what's happening in our heads. But now I'm asking you, if it's not just these chemical reactions, what else is there? You said God. So is God?
Are you aware of?
Is God causing?
The difference between,
is it God that's causing you to say what you're saying right now, Matt?
Are you aware of the difference between what's called property dualism and substance dualism regarding the mind?
Matt, this conversation is not going to work if it's not a two-way street. I've answered a lot of your questions. Is it God? Is God causing you to say the words that you're saying right now?
Yes and no, direct and indirect.
Can you explain?
Yes,
Please
I
do.
can. But your questions, what you're doing is you're trying to get out from the weight of the problem of your position. Your position is that the physical brain is limited to the chemical reactions that are governed by the laws of physics. How is it that the laws of physics that govern your chemical reactions in your brain produce truth values? If you say that the truth values are produced by chemical reactions, really? Where'd you get that? How does one chemical state lead to another chemical state produce truth?
Did
Truth
God
is an abstraction.
God just made you say that, Matt?
Yeah, he did by the direct and indirect will. Yep.
How did
Good
God
Calvinism there.
How did God do that? Make you say those words?
By the direct and indirect. So you're trying to get out from your position.
I'm
Your
showing that
situation.
the problem that you think I have can be put right back on you. So please explain to me, Matt, how exactly God causes your neurons to fire and produce
I will
speech.
answer you, and then I'll answer you. Then I'll come back to your position. In biblical theology, God works all things after the counsel of His will, which means that He can, by direct and by indirect means, bring about whatsoever He decides. That's Ephesians 1:11. So He can directly cause us to believe certain things. He grants that we have faith, Philippians 1:29. He causes us to be born again, 1 Peter 1:3. But He can also work through what's called proximate conditions, by which He can arrange certain circumstances by which we, in the exercise of our free will, because we're not property dualists like you, but we're substance dualists, can then act in a manner that is free, according to what He has given us, because we're made in His image. Genesis 1:26. This deals with the communicable attributes of God. So we have freedom, but the freedom is not outside of God's sovereignty. So God is able to work with our freedom, not mere chemical reaction necessity, but our freedom because we're souls in bodies, that He can work through His sovereignty by direct and indirect means to bring about whatsoever He desires. Okay?
Yeah, okay. I
Now,
appreciate that answer, but it's not an answer to the question I asked. So you asked me a very specific question. How is it that chemical reactions can produce truth value, right? That's one of the questions you asked me. I'm asking this back at you from your Christian perspective. What is the mechanism that God uses to cause your neurons to fire and your speech and audible sound waves to come out of your mouth? How does He do it?
He has set in place the materialistic world by which and in which we operate, but we're not restricted to it the way your worldview advocates that you are.
What do you mean not restricted to it?
Because we're souls. We're not property dualists. We're substance dualists.
What's a soul?
A soul is the thing that is immaterial, that is what we are, that can exist as self-awareness and self-identity in our personhood. It can exist apart from a physical form in the body.
So the soul is immaterial. Can you so you tell me what it's not, but what is it?
Well, I tell you what it's not.
You said immaterial. When you put the letters I am in front of a word, it's basically not. So you're saying it's not material, but I'm asking what it is. What's the soul?
Now, it's called an apophatic explanation. Apophatic explanations is describing something by what it's not.
I know, and I'm asking what it is.
The soul is that immaterial thing.
You did it again.
Immaterial thing.
You're answering my question by what it's not instead of rather what it is.
Can you let me finish my sentences? You keep going back on your word.
I thought you were modding this Wayfinder.
Hey, I am. Just a second, guys. Hey,
I thought
hold up.
Your atheism.
Don't overtalk me. Now the thing is that I've been timing this, and Matt's taken a lot more time than him. So
Amen.
you get a
Thank
little
you.
leeway to overtalk when someone is filibustering a lot. That's just the way it is. You can't talk 80% of the time and then whine when someone's like says, "Hey, please define soul."
Hey, Wayfinder.
Okay,
Wayfinder.
Fair. Just interrupt him when you want.
Wayfinder, what is the time? You said you've been tracking the time. How much time has Matt taken compared to me?
Matt's taken about 22 minutes and you've taken about 14 minutes.
You hear that, Matt? You need to
So it's
really
not
get
timing.
concise and precise with your language. Because even when you ask me questions, I answer very quickly. And this is, you think it's a problem with atheists, but I think it's a problem you have with just people in general, that people will tend to interrupt you, Matt, when you talk too much.
Just interrupt him whenever you want to, Matt. Just do the same thing back.
No, don't do that. Just also realize that the atheist, forget your name, he has answered more questions, and Matt has been dodging more questions than you would expect.
You're full of crap.
Also,
well, Pedro,
why don't you believe God is eternal?
Isn't the moderator not supposed to put his opinion in this?
Fanboys
Well,
are
no,
upset.
Pedro,
Trying to
why
train
are
you
you
up.
encouraging bad behavior with
See,
him?
is the moderator an atheist?
I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry that you Calvinists are triggered by this. But
I'm
No,
just asking,
listen,
are
no,
you an
I'm
atheist?
not triggered by anything. I'm
Matt
only
Slick,
asking, why are you putting your
wouldn't
opinion in? I thought you were
wouldn't even
here.
acknowledge that God is eternal.
Wayfinder, that's fine. I'm asking, why are you, as the moderator, putting your opinion in right now?
Can you
You
guys
do that all the
please
time, Pedro.
have the conversation? These
Yes,
guys.
hold on, I'm going to say something. He said I said that God wasn't eternal. I wouldn't answer if he was. I didn't do that. I didn't do that because of the issue, the nature of the question. Maybe you don't know enough to know how I'm going to answer my question. Maybe it does take a lot longer to put a vase back together once it's